Discovery number 17. The function of neurons. It had started to rain. Breckan cursed the sky as the water turned the already tricky to navigate dirt road into an even harder to navigate sludge. But still he and Julie pressed on. Their bones started to ache as the rain seeped through their clothes and made them cold and heavy. But still, he and Julie pressed on. Breckan felt his breathing becoming strained, and his mind was spinning. But still, he and Julie pressed on, until they saw the all too familiar industrial terrain appear on the horizon. Then Breckan felt all his aches fade away, and had only Zoot in his mind. They ignored the shouts of Julie's father's crew, a few of which were standing outside, and ran into the building. Breckan knew where to go. He ran to the laboratory where he'd seen Zoot and Rizzo change bodies, but found that the door was still closed, and that Julie's father's crew was trying to get it open without much success. What if they didn't get it open in time? Breckan shuddered at the thought. But then again, it wouldn't make sense for the door to still be barricaded. Not if Zoot and his mom had gone in there after she had locked the guard and his father in there. Unless she'd locked herself and Zoot in there as well. She seemed desperate enough, but still it was odd to say the least. As he heard Julie come up behind him, he realized. "They're not here," he said. "Come with me." He took Julie by the hand and quickly led her away, through hallways, doors, and corridors, up the stairs and into the bathroom. Julie raised her eyebrows at the towels that were strewn all over the floor, but Breckan smiled a furtive smile, knowing he had been right in his thinking. Whatever his mother had done to Zoot, he would find out once he went through the door in the towel closet. He swallowed, his hands shaking, opened the bright red door, and stepped onto the stairs. He had to steady himself by putting his right hand to the wall, as he looked down and saw Zoot, lying motionless in a tilted dentist's chair. His mother was nowhere to be seen. Breckan felt as though it wasn't real. As though he wasn't really seeing his friend with his eyes closed and face pale. It felt as though he was looking through a window and into a different reality, because this reality was too much to bear. Zoot's palms were red, just like in the dream. "You still can't save me." "Breckan?" He felt Julie's hand gently being placed upon his shoulder. It shook him out of his stupor, and he shouted, "He's here! Zoot's here! Julie's father!" He then shakily went down the stairs, his knees finally giving out at the bottom. He wanted so badly to go to him, but he couldn't. He hardly noticed Julie scooping up the little mouse gently in her hands. He watched as Julie's father's crew came and carried Zoot away. The trek back to the town center was fraught with worry, yet the wait in the hospital's waiting room was even more anxious. Julie's father came into the room from time to time to keep Breckan and Julie updated. His crew had finally gotten open the door to the lab and taken the guard and Breckan's father in custody, but his mother was still nowhere to be found. One of the crew's members had recognized Zoot's face from the milk cartons and called his parents. It turned out they had gone abroad for a while to distract themselves from the desperation of missing their son, but would come back on the first flight that would take them. Albie and his father had gone home to reunite him with his mother. Julie's father didn't try to make Breckan and Julie go home, because he knew they wouldn't. Mo rested on Julie's lap. Finally, after the sun had gone down and nearly rose again, a woman in a lab coat came into the room, with the power to either give them relief or shatter their hopes. "He's stable," she said. "Unconscious, yet stable." "Thank you," said Breckan, dizzying relief flooding through him. "May I ask?" "What's wrong with him?" The doctor smiled a kind smile. "Well, he was stabbed, but I think you already knew that, didn't you?" Breckan winced and nodded. "As for the rest, His body behaves as though it has been struck by a lightning, by a very strong electric current, that is, but strangely enough, a quite precise lightning, especially in his brain. Very specific areas of neurons have been affected there, as though it was planned. What do neurons do? Asked Julie. Many things, said the doctor. They carry information throughout the body, you see. Say, if I were to poke you in the arm, the neurons would tell the brain that you've been poked there. But say, if I was thinking I wanted to move my arm, the neurons will tell the muscle in my arm to contract. And Zoots are broken? Asked Breckan, his voice sounding strained. Damaged, she said, a regretful look in her eyes. But yes. That's not good, is it? She shook her head. It isn't, no, I won't lie. But his heart is beating, and his lungs are breathing, so now there isn't much to do but wait and hope the damage isn't too severe. Breckan looked down. He hated this powerless feeling. You could visit him if you wanted, the doctor offered. Usually we only allow next of kin, but seeing as his family won't be here yet for a while, I'm sure he could use the company. Would you want to? Yes, said Breckan softly, even though he also felt terrified at the thought of seeing him like that again, without having the means to help. But doing anything was better than doing nothing. Thank you. She led him down the corridor, leaving Julie and Mo behind. They arrived at Zoot's room. The plate on the door said, Richard Flanagan. The doctor put a hand on his shoulder and gave him another rueful smile. I'll wait here, she said. Take all the time you need. Breckan nodded and took a few breaths to steady himself. Then he went inside. And there he was. Zoot. Breckan felt his breathing speed up as he saw his friend again. Motionless, powerless, broken. A machine beeped through the silence that hung in the stale hospital air, showing his steady heartbeat. Ever so slowly, Breckan went to Zoot's side. He put his hand over his, hoping Zoot could feel it. He stood like that for a while, until he found the courage to say the words that were on his mind. I'm sorry, Zoot. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. But you did save me, a voice sounded in his head. Breckan looked around to see who had spoken, but the only other person in the room was Zoot, and he had his eyes and mouth closed. Zoot? You heard me? Then I guess in a way it worked. My mother's invention? Breckan wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. Yes, but it seems to only work when I am between dreaming and waking. I couldn't do it before. You're between dreaming and waking? Breckan asked, his voice rising up, almost not daring to hope. Yes. And then Breckan saw Zoot's eyes move underneath his eyelids, and slowly, very slowly, it really was happening, Zoot opened his eyes, blinking sleepily. Hi, mouthed Zoot without sound. Hi, because that was all they needed to say. 2 months later. It was a windy day, but they didn't mind. Breckan and Julie had picked up Zoot from the rehabilitation center, Julie carrying Albie and Mo in her hands, Breckan pushing Zoot in his chair, which proved quite a challenge the closer they got to the sandy beach. But sooner or later they'd found themselves face to face with the sea, and felt the breeze in their faces. Things had been going all right since that day, as all right as they could possibly be in these circumstances anyway. Zoot had had to relearn almost everything, because everything was damaged in a way. He still knew how to talk, and think, and remember things, but it was difficult to get his voice to speak and his arms and legs to move in the way he wanted to. He'd been reunited with his parents, and he told Breckan that it had gone better than he expected. Things were still a bit weird between them, but his parents had realized when he ran away just how much they really cared about him, and Zoot had learned the same. His parents called him Richard, of course. "Do you want me to call you Richard, too?" Breckan had asked him, thinking he might want to forget the name his mother had coined him. I'm not sure," had said Zoot, pulling a face. "That's okay," had said Breckan. "We'll figure it out." Albie's parents, though they'd gotten him back as a rodent, were delighted to be reunited with their son. They'd also taken in Mo, who didn't really have anywhere to go, and presently they played together in the sand at the edge of the sea. Mo and Albie hoped to be able to turn back into their human forms sometime, knowing rats and mice didn't live forever, and nor could they really hold a pencil or play video games. Their bodies had been stored in a safe place by the crew, in case they ever figured out how to change back. And as for Breckan, Julie's parents had been more than happy to shelter him, now that one of his parents was in jail and the other was on the run. Breckan still thought about all that had happened often, with much fear and regret, but at least he had a home and friends. Albie's parents finally had a place to forward his comics to, and he could finally sleep in a familiar house again. And so it was, as they all watched the waves and tasted the sea on the wind blowing in their faces, that they were happy. Happy to just exist. For though Zoot would still have a long way to go in his recovery, and though Albie and Mo were still rats and mice, and though Brecken's mother was still out there and things were far from all right, they knew things would be okay in the end. Because they were on the beach, and they were alive, and because they had each other.